Welcome to the Next Steps Show with Peter Vazquez, a starting point for discussion y un poco de dirección. Yep, what will you do next, ladies and gentlemen? I think that's an appropriate noon question. See, as you're sitting there eating your McDouble or your bacon wrap, right? You know, enjoying the day because it's beautiful out there. You know, God, country, and family always says you got to find time for that inner soul. You absolutely do. You know, and I'll tell you, if you live in places that are as cold as New York or in comparison to places that are as warm as California, then, you know, listen, that's okay too, because when you visualize things in tu cabeza, guess what happens? You know, it actually does come true. I do believe that. And the thing is this, though, ladies and gentlemen, right? Because every conversation, see, you know, we got to talk about reality. But we got to talk about warm places like California. See, because warm, beautiful places like California are becoming the warning. And the thing is, cold, miserable, high-tax places like New York State, you know, they're becoming the echo. See? And we know that the crisis is national. Watchdogs becomes weapons, schools, right? They serve systems, right? Think about that. Community schools. Compassion becomes coercion. Race redraws power. Homes becomes portfolios instead of, right, the crux of what's inheritable, what you leave for your children. I mean, since when did home ownership actually dictate, right? Well, check this out. When government says, right, that home ownership is a birthright, that it's not an opportunity or an ability to be able to create growth and that they should own it, or at least that's how they're acting, to me, mira, that's a problem. Check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. You know, California's not that, nor is America. See, but the question is whether enough people still have the courage to name the rot, reject the lies, and rebuild on principles, see, that made this country, God, country, and family oh so long ago, ladies and gentlemen. See, and today's guest, check it out. He gets the fight, right? We've had him on here before, right? A Project 21 ambassador. And listen, before you start saying, oh my gosh, is that all that Peter interviews? Of course not, but these are important discussions because as we walk into the midterm elections, see, just this November, you're going to hear a lot of this. Oh, if you're black, right, you got to vote Democrat, or if you're Hispanic, or I mean, because you're already hearing us. Amita joining us, right, is a black conservative voice in a hostile political territory, ladies and gentlemen. He's a media veteran, a policy advocate, a school board trustee in the state of California, right? He'll tell you more. And a movement communicator, see, standing where culture, law, education, economics, and liberty collide, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us, see, is el Señor Craig DeLuz, Project 21 ambassador, the California Republican Assembly spokesman, host of The Rundown, and a longtime Robles School District Board trustee. Señor DeLuz, bienvenido al Next Step Show.
It is a pleasure to be with you, sir.
The pleasure is ours, Papa. And, you know, I'll tell you, this is great because sometimes, you know, here in New York, when we talk to you guys over on the West Coast, it's kind of like we're talking to another world sometimes.
It does feel like that some way. But, you know, the good thing is I spend a lot of my time getting out of California and visiting America. Mm-hmm. And so it's good to meet patriots from all over the country. And, you know, as coming from a state where you are also kind of, what I like to say, to a certain degree behind enemy lines, I know you feel our pain.
You know, that's a great movie title. Leaving Cali, going to America. And the thing is, I mean, places like California and New York, like I said, sometimes it feels like you're in another country, not part of a great nation that believes in God, country, and family. You know, I have a lot of listeners that listen on the West Coast, there in California, actually. How's life in the West Coast? How's the warm, beautiful weather? Because, you know, California, I mean, they've made songs about how great that state is. So you guys must be loving it there from all walks of life, right?
Oh, you know, it is the weather, it is the geography. There are so many blessings here in California. It is the only reason; those blessings are the only reason why California has not gone into total collapse yet, although it's getting there. But there are so many blessings about California. The interesting thing is it makes the left and the politicians think, well, people will never leave California because it's got all of this. Well, everybody has their ouch point. And we're at a point now where many, many people, in terms of hundreds of thousands of people every year, have hit their ouch point and are leaving the state of California.
Yeah. You know, once upon a time, I lived in Barstow, California, down in the southern part of California. I think the population when I was there was probably 4, and that was me and my just kidding. It was a little bit bigger than that. I had one donut shop, one Kmart. I heard it's grown since. Actually, my oldest son was born in Victorville, over at Victorville Hospital, Victorville Memorial, I think it was called.
Wow.
Are you in that area, or are you up north?
No. I'm in Northern California. I'm actually in Sacramento, the belly of the beast, where all of the bad liberal ideas are birthed before they invade the rest of the nation.
Well, those bad liberal ideas there in Sacramento, you could see them on the streets. You know, I was there visiting my daughter a few years ago while she was volunteering with AmeriCorps, and she was stationed out of Sacramento, I believe, or the general area. And we saw under a bridge, and I stopped, and I was going to take a picture, and then, you know, I was too heartbroken. I'm like, I'm not going to take a picture of this person. They should have. But it looks like they lost their home, because under this bridge, they broke down all their furniture into different sections under the bridge to show a bedroom, a living room, and so on and so forth. But that's still going on in California, even though you've got a governor that's saying, no, you know, this liberal policy is the way that it needs to be.
You know, California has, well, first of all, we have more homeless people than any other state in the nation. We have more illegal immigrants than any other state in the nation. We have greater poverty and income inequality than any other state in the nation. And it just goes to show that whatever you incentivize, you will get more of. Mm-hmm.
That is 100%. And, you know, the thing is, they're learning that in New York pretty quick, because, you know, the bigger the welfare checks become, the bigger the dependency has become. And the crazy thing about it, Craig, is that bigger dependency really is not just happening in black and brown communities. It's taking place in rural America, where they're going after in throws without so much resources. I haven't seen so many people in a desperate situation as I have in the last 10 years in places like Yates County here in New York State. But party rule, or one party rule, I should say, kind of leads to that kind of disaster in states, doesn't it?
Well, in particular, if it's the Democratic Party,
absolutely.
You know, and the sad part is many of them believe that what they're doing is they're actually helping. The problem is that whenever you disincentivize someone to get up on their own 2 feet, whenever you disincentivize them to earn an income, whenever you disincentivize them to provide for their own family, to take risks and invest and to be successful, whenever you say, okay, well, the more successful you are, the more we're going to harm you, the more we're going to take from you, then what happens is you don't have people being successful. You don't have people working hard. You don't have people innovating, and you wind up attracting the sorts of people who weren't interested in doing those things anyway.
No. Public Policy Institute of California, or also known as the PPIC, in February, right? They had a survey that they put out that said likely voter registration is at 46% Democrat, 27% Republican, 25% decline to state or independent, and then 2% other parties. You know what again, you're ladies and gentlemen, this is Craig DeLuz, Project 21 ambassador, calling us from the west coast of this great nation of ours. And these numbers, Craig, these numbers that I just read to you on party registration, they mirror Monroe County or New York State, where the Democrats have the lead. But the thing is, when you look at independent or refuse to state what they are candidates, and you combine them with Republicans, they actually are supersede Democrats. But Greg, I've been able to confirm over the years I've been doing what I do that a lot of those independent voters here in this area, or the ones that kind of refuse to publicly state where they stand do lean God, country, and family, not necessarily Republican. Do you see the same thing there in your area?
The numbers that we've seen, pretty much the decline of state tends to vote 2-1 Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, there are individuals who are frustrated with the Republican Party here in California because they haven't presented that bold distinction they're trying to be soft. And for many years, the California Republican Party tried to be, Democrat light. And you're just now starting to see a lot of newer electeds here in California are not afraid to be conservative, not afraid to be vocal, largely because, the big social issues are not necessarily abortion like they were in the past. It's, maybe not wanting pornography in your child's school or not wanting sex change operations on children, which, puts us in a much better light in terms of the fact that we're on the right side of those 80-20 issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Senor Craig DeLuz, Project 21 Ambassador. Sir, I believe everything that I read shows that California is ready for an opposition party again, meaning that if all we have is two parties, you guys are ready for the left-right system. Nita, we're going to talk about that when we come back right here on the Next Step Show with Peter Vazquez and the Voice of Liberty.
Go Steve Hilton. WYSL, WLEA, the Voice of Liberty. If you're looking for an electrician to help with your projects around your home, office, or business, call TriStar Electric. They're your friendly neighborhood electricians, and they can help you replace an electrical outlet, install a ceiling fan, or replace your whole electrical service. They're also the preferred professionals for Tesla EV chargers and Generac generators. Veteran and family owned. Call TriStar Electric today, 585-880-0529, or book an appointment at tri-star-electric.com.
The youth of our city are in a new crisis. Criminal justice reform has created the consequences of no consequences, generated a whole new generation of 12 to 17-year-old kids committing serious crimes. Never before have we had this level of youthful offenders. But 90% of these kids are just trying to do the right thing and need a safe sanctuary to retreat to. That's Rochester Youth for Christ. You can be a part of this solution by giving generously and regularly at yfcrochester.org/donate.
Peter Vazquez and Next Step Show on the Voice of Liberty.
Brought to you by Youth for Christ Rochester, yfcrochester.org. Again, here is Peter Vazquez.
Thank you, senor. Thank you. And you know something, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say it one more time. See, God is good. Just in case you forgot. Mira, on the teléfono, I have Craig DeLuz, Project 21 Ambassador, California Republican Assembly spokesman. Ladies and gentlemen, sir, before break, I said, it appears to me, based on what I read and prep for the show, that California wants an opposition party again, something similar to that left and right, Republican, Democrat. Talk to us about that. Am I misinterpreting the data?
I'm sorry, I missed what you were saying. What the thing that you had, the question?
Yep, no. So California right now, I believe your voting system is a little different than the rest of us, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
You could have two Republicans running at the same time in the November election, etc. But go ahead.
We have what's called a jungle primary or a top two primary, meaning in the primary election, everybody's on the same ballot. Everyone gets the same ballot. So right now there are about 62 candidates running for governor, and they're all listed on one ballot, regardless of political party. And the two candidates that get the most votes will then move forward into the general election. There's no write-ins, no nothing. Whoever gets into the top two, if no one gets over 50%. Whoever gets into the top two will wind up in the general election in the fall.
Gotcha. But it seems to me, from what I read, or at least in prep for the show, some of the data that I saw, that the Californians want to kind of change that. They want an opposition party. They want to see a Republican and a Democrat in the general election. I do find it kind of hard to distinguish between two Republicans running in the general election together. It's almost like a uniparty at that point.
Well, the challenge is, and the reason why you're hearing politicians now talk about they want to change it is, they did that. Democrats did that, and they pushed that thing through so that they could wind up having 2 Democrats running against each other in general elections. Well, now, because it's in the state of California, when it came to the gubernatorial race, I mean, we started off with something like 7 or 9 Democratic candidates running for governor, and all of them were equally unimpressive. Such so that at one point, none of them were getting over 10%. And what started to happen now is that as one person creeps up above 10%, the others start spending a bunch of money doing a bunch of hit pieces and hit ads against them, and that then brings them down. So the problem they're having now is we only have 2 really top-tier Republicans running. And so in just about every poll, those 2 Republicans have been 1 and 2. So there is a real possibility. I'm not saying it's likely, but there's a more than a puncher's chance that we could wind up having 2 Republicans in the general election, meaning absolutely no Democrats at the governor's end, in the governor's race come November.
Is that even a possibility? I mean, I hear you, but looking at the numbers, looking at the breakdown, just registration alone and turnout, looking at the what is that called? The recall that they had when Gruesome Newsom, went through that. Is it possible for Republicans to end up as the only ones in the ballot?
Well, when you consider that there are still 7 Democrats running, only one of them is getting more than 10% in the polls. That right now currently is Javier Becerra. But right now there are tons of hit pieces. I mean, Tom Steyer, who has already spent somewhere north of $150 million in this gubernatorial race, is now pounding the airwaves with campaign ads against Javier Becerra. And as soon as Tom Steyer starts to come up a little bit, everyone will start spending money against Tom Steyer. It is a possibility largely because Democrats are doing the crab in a barrel thing.
Interesting.
What's the crab in a barrel thing?
Oh, sorry. The crab in a barrel thing is as soon as a crab starts to climb up towards the top, the other crabs start to pull them back down.
Oh, okay.
Down with them.
Yeah, I'm a little rusty on my crab sociology, but I got it now.
One of our listeners on the West Coast, Mark Turner, said that you are 100% correct. He said California has been depending on federal subsidies to bail out failed and corrupt policies, and that many of these dried up under Trump. Now, I have to assume, as a conservative, you support Trump in California. Oh, most definitely. The main thing that he's talking about right there has to do with the one is the subsidies that they have been providing for electric vehicles, but the big one was the COVID subsidies. California was in serious danger of huge budget deficits until they started receiving billions of dollars in COVID money. Tons of California schools were in danger of going insolvent. If it hadn't been for once again the COVID money, the money that came from D.C. and the COVID money and the money that was infused into the economy. Now the challenge is that all of that money is now dried up, and in many of these cases, a lot of these local municipalities in the state of California, instead of saying, okay, let's use this time to be more frugal, to make the sorts of cuts that we need to make so that we don't run a structural deficit, they ballooned the programs. They gave raises to employees. They increased benefits. They added programs, and they started adding benefits to both homeless as well as illegal immigrants. And now all of a sudden the budget is, I mean, we went from $100 billion surplus to now we're at a structural deficit of $35 billion. And structural means that unless you change something, it's guaranteed that's going to happen. And that structural deficit is going to grow year over year. Ladies and gentlemen, Psalms 12, verse 8 says that the wicked walk on every side when the vilest of men are exhausted. And I just want to point that out because, see, to me, that's a warning to the nations that reward deception and protect corruption. Sir, you mentioned the the governor's race. And I do want to bring up the top Democrat that's running. I think you mentioned it as well. Xavier Becerra, right?
Javier Becerra.
Javier Becerra. So on May 12th, the American Thinker, there was a commentary there that I read that said that this individual, this candidate, had said in regards to an interview request, I guess, that this profile piece is not a gotcha piece. He was asking, I guess, or demanding a puff piece. I believe his words were, "This is a profile piece, yet this is not a gotcha piece," right? So tell me something. I kind of dubbed this phrase here that we call the Van Boozeness crisis, which I believe is the real issue that we're dealing with here in America, right? Where we're being kind of lied to on a continuous basis, not just a one-off politician that lies to you or makes you promises that he knows that he or she cannot keep, but more that controlling the message and, well, news networks agreeing to kind of agreeing to that. Now, that didn't happen in this particular request, I guess, but when you've got governors that are lying like Newsom, and then you've got candidates that are saying the same thing, I mean, I guess that explains why they're not doing as well as the Republicans in the polls, or maybe provides the chance.
Well, eventually you can only get away with lies for so long. Eventually reality starts to catch up with you. There was this, for example, when everyone says, well, we want to fix affordability, and then UC Berkeley releases a study that says that the reason why California is so unaffordable is because of the policies passed at the local and state level, whether it comes to energy, whether it comes to home building, whether it comes to minimum wage, whether it comes to taxation. And you realize that one party, the Democratic Party, is the one who's passed all of those policies. And then you have the politicians who come out and say, well, I'm not going to change any of those policies. I'm going to do the exact same thing that we've been doing. Well, people may not necessarily always be paying attention, but they're not stupid. And eventually they realize that when the other side is doing the wrong thing over and over again, they start to wake up to reality. Now, they may not have necessarily bought into the idea of what the Republicans are saying, but they at least know that the Democrats are full of it. And the media is now starting to wake up and recognize these issues and these concerns. What happened in the Palisades and what the Palisades fire is clearly a failure of Democratic leadership, and yet somehow they refuse to take ownership of the problem. The inability of the average Californian to be able to afford a home in California when it costs almost $150,000 before you even put a shovel in the ground to build single-family home, because of environmental costs, because of labor costs, because of NIMBYism in the state of California. Eventually, the media has gotten to the point where the obvious is hard to ignore. And they're also finding that the obvious makes for a much better story.
Hey, Craig, sidekick Bob Savage here. So what's it actually like on the ground there? What is the reaction to Steve Hilton? The polls are amazingly close, I see.
Well, the thing is, one of the things I want to note is Steve Hilton has spent a significant amount of time in California preparing for this run. One of the things he's done is he has met with thought leaders in various different areas, in business, in law enforcement, in education, in the faith community. And so one of the things that he's been very successful at doing is, number one, identifying what the key problems are and coming up with realistic solutions or ways in which to address those, which I think gives me a little bit of a difference between him and Bianco. Bianco's right on all the positions, and I know what he believes in, but some of the things that he says he wants to do, my question is, how do you do that with a Democrat-controlled legislature, Democrats running every other constitutional office, and a left-leaning court system in California?
But at least maybe a glimmer of hope, though, yes?
Oh, yeah, most definitely a glimmer of hope.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Honorable C. Craig DeLuz, Project 21 Ambassador, California Republican Assembly spokesman and host of The Rundown. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back right here in the Next Step Show with Peter Vazquez and the Voice of Liberty. No te vayas, don't go nowhere.
WYSL, WLEA.
The Voice of Liberty. WYSL. Avon, Rochester, WLEA, WLEA FM, Hornell, New York. Southern Tier Update.
On the topic of the state wanting all electric school buses in the next few years, Hornell School Superintendent Jeremy Pilati says he's been asked about this by the voters. Pilati says the short answer is Hornell is not rushing to purchase electric buses and not rushing to implement this whole thing. The Hornell School Superintendent Jeremy Pilati also says Hornell currently does not have any electric vehicle buses, and while they're researching them, they have no plans to purchase any in the near future. Canisteo Greenwood School Superintendent Tom Crooks says in recent days there's been reports out from Newsday and other media outlets saying there could be a 5-year delay on the deadline for getting all these new buses for school districts, and that could be in the state budget. And in Prattsburg Central School teachers took their sophomore class recently to Camp Good Days and did some cleanup work there. The Prattsburg teachers say their students learned a lot about helping the community. Brian O'Neill for the Voice of Liberty.
Here's the News 10 NBC Weather Center forecast for the southern tier. Tonight will be mostly cloudy. Could be a brief shower in the 40s. Thursday, a cool day. Only in the 40s, maybe low 50s. Lots of clouds, couple of showers. And then Friday, a little milder with some slow clearing in the 60s. I'm Rich Cadilia for the Voice of Liberty.
Spring savings and colorful selection are popping up everywhere at Dansville Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Franklin Street in Dansville. Try these deals. A 26 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab 4x4 pickup is only $389 a month for 39 months, 10,000 miles per year. A 26 Jeep Compass in bright white clear coat is only $189 a month for 27 months, 7,500 miles per year. A 26 Jeep Wrangler Sport S convertible is only $249 a month for 36 months, 7,500 miles per year. And a 25 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited is just $399 a month for 36 months, 10,000 miles per year. All these deals require first payment, DMV taxes and fees due at signing, must have lease loyalty. For Compass, must have 4xe lease loyalty. All deals require $2,500 cash or trade down. Other conditions may apply. See dealer for details. We're paying top dollar for trades and welcome Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram customers in Hornell, Bath, Wellsville, Perry, and Warsaw. Get out in the spring sunshine and come take a test drive at Dansville Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Franklin Street, near the airport.
FM Talk.
You'll be comfortable with the best. Turnbull Heating and Air.
Turnbull Heating and Air celebrates 60 years of service, expertise, and reliability in Western New York. Get $750 off any newly installed heating or cooling system. And Turnbull also wants to reach out to experienced HVAC residential and commercial technicians, as well as those just starting that career, to join our family of experts. The path to your future on the Turnbull team can include tuition reimbursement, paid training, and potential apprenticeships. Call Turnbull about your future as an HVAC tech at 585-501-9100. 585-501-9100. Keeping Western New Yorkers comfortable with the best for over 60 years now. Turnbull Heating and Air.
You'll be comfortable with the best. Turnbull Heating and Air.
The youth of our city are in a new crisis. Criminal justice reform has created the consequences of no consequences and generated a whole new generation of 12 to 17-year-old kids committing serious crimes. Never before have we had this level of youthful offenders, but 90% of these kids are just trying to do the right thing and need a safe sanctuary to retreat to. That's Rochester Youth for Christ. You can be a part of this solution by giving generously and regularly at yfcrochester.org/donate.
Time for some good news. It's time for the Advantage Auto Loan Rate Sale. With rates as low as 3.99% APR, you can use your low rate to buy a new car, used car, or refinance your existing auto loan if it's with another lender. Even skip payments for the first 60 days. The Advantage Auto Loan Rate Sale will save you now and down the road. This is a sale, so that sweet 3.99% is for a limited time only. Go to AdvantageFCU.org today. Membership subject to eligibility. Member NCUA. Limited time offer.
Smart banking.
Avon Gun and Hunting Supply, a locally owned and operated gun shop specializing in pre-owned firearms and repairs. Get your rifle, shotgun, or pistol serviced and tuned before you take it to the field. Open from 10 a.m. Tuesday through Saturday. Avon Gun, East Main Street, next to Tompkins Community Bank.
Pod 1515 Monroe Avenue. Save more, get more at Pod Computers. Prompt on-site service for local businesses. Pod can upgrade your old, slow PC better than new. Pod Computers, 244-2240. PodComputers.com.
Peter Vazquez, the Next Step Show on the Voice of Liberty.
Thanks for spending your lunchtime with us here on the Voice of Liberty, WYSL, WLEA. How about that $1.16 billion Rochester City Schools budget that was passed last night? We're not talking about, like the national budget for Bulgaria or for a major state. It's a school district in freaking Rochester, New York. Per pupil costs approaching, with a legacy cost, $50,000 a year.
Ladies and gentlemen, Craig DeLuz, Project 21 Ambassador. Sir, you sit on a school board, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so just last night, the Rochester City School Board District, which is ranked in the top 3 as the worst school district in New York State and the highest paid school board in the country, just to prove the budget, the size, well, really, of some of the small nations throughout this planet. $1.16 billion. What do you say to something like that? Because, again, California is the... it's what's happening. We're the echo. Where are we with that?
I'm thinking about what could we do with that kind of money. I will just tell you, it is. I blame the voters. I blame the people who continue to elect these folks. That they didn't get this bad overnight. Their budget didn't get that big overnight. It happened over a period of time, and as the voters have checked out, that's what you wind up getting. You see, we focus so much in our conversations about the top office, about the president, about the governor, about the Senate, about the Congress. We don't even think who sits on our school board, who sits on our city council, who sits on our county board of supervisors, who's the local sheriff, who's the DA. These are the people that are making the decisions that most impact our lives. Think about the school board. These are the people to whom you entrust your children for most of their waking hours. They're the ones you're entrusting them to prepare them for their future.
Absolutely. And Craig,
you don't even know who they are.
Yeah, Craig, I'll tell you who they are. You look at the composition of the Monroe County, that's Rochester's home county, Monroe County Legislature, 100% Democrat.
Yeah.
You look at the composition of the Rochester City School Board, 100% Democrat.
And flaming Democrat, not just Democrat, like the progressive arm of the most progressive people out there.
The screaming crazies.
The neo-Marxists.
Yes, exactly. They're absolutely Marxists. The city council, 100% Democrat. And the city of Rochester's had a Democrat mayor for the last 40 years.
Well, I'll tell you, though, this is the thing to know, though. Even in areas that are conservative, you look at who is running the schools, they tend to be liberal. Even in conservative areas.
Yes.
I can't tell you the amount of times I have tried to get the California Republican Party to take the issue of education seriously and put up serious candidates for superintendent of public instruction or put up serious candidates to run for school board. And it was only post-COVID when people started to see some of the cultural issues that are taking place in our schools, that people started waking up and started to run for office. And even with that, 90% of what they're talking about is the cultural issues. And don't get me wrong, we need to make sure that we're getting some of this sexual content, not some of it, all of the sexual content out of our schools. We need to make sure that our schools are not indoctrinating our children. But we also need to make sure that our kids know how to read, write, and do math at grade level. We also need to make sure that the tax dollars that are flowing into these schools, in many cases, up to if not more than half of the state budget. That money is being spent efficiently and in a way that's serving kids. But we don't even stop to think about those issues. We're more worried about the hot button issues.
In April 16th of 2025, sir, you wrote an article. You wrote a compassion or coercion. It says, what is the role of government in a free society? And you said these words. You said, true compassion does not impose, it empowers. You also warned that generosity strips the choice, and it becomes coercion wearing a halo, sir. You argue that compassion, compassion loses its moral meaning when it is detached from choice, sacrifice, relationship, and responsibility. And again, that boils into, or at least I believe that feeds into the Van Boozenist crisis, which is the true national crisis. To be told our entire lives, because you're black, correct?
Yes, I am.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked someone in your cohort. I think it was Phil. Sir, you're black. According to New York State government and policies, according to California government and policies, because you're black and me because I'm Hispanic, sir, we must need government help. What would be your response today?
My response would be the same as it was for Frederick Douglass, and that is that the best thing that you can do for the black man is to leave us alone. Your compassion has done nothing ever. All of the policies that have been implemented have harmed the black community. Interesting thing that people didn't realize. Before civil rights, before the New Deal, before the war on poverty, in a black family, you were more likely black people were more likely to be married. Black children were more likely to grow up in an intact home. They were more likely to get educated and graduate from high school. They were less likely to be involved in crime. It wasn't until the Great Society, the government decided that they wanted to help, that you started to see the separation of the black family, that you started to see poverty become a way of life, a generational curse upon the black community.
Yeah, black women were encouraged to marry the government. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, with all due respect, I go back to Ronald Reagan when he said, the 9 most dangerous words are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A very good friend of mine, a person that I have a lot of respect for, by the name of Gary Stout. He kind of hosts or co-hosts or
Second Amendment
show here on the Voice of Liberty. He said, it sounds like the California Republican Party has the same motto as New York. We are number 2 and we're happy with it. Sir, I got one more question before we go to our last break, sir. Because, this question comes up a lot, or at least the word does. What exactly does it mean to be black in the United States? Is it skin color? Is it a culture? Is it a way of life that we're, foreign to, or the white people just simply can't understand because it's so different from being American? I mean, what am I missing here?
Well, America is made up of a lot of what I call, or a lot of subcultures, meaning there are a lot of different American experiences. Right. And not everybody experiences America the same way, has experienced it the same way. And so for me, being black, it's a common experience that we share. Now, for me, it is part of who I am. It is part of it's my cultural experience. So it's part of who I am, but it doesn't define who I am. People don't realize this, but whenever someone says, I'm colorblind, colorblindness is not something to aspire to. Colorblindness is a lack of recognition of a difference that actually exists. Now, I'm not saying you should dwell on those differences, but let's not pretend like they don't exist. I'll give you a great example. I was speaking at a Republican Women's Federated event, and a woman comes up to me. She says, I don't see color. Like, this is my friend Rose, and when I see Rose, I don't see a black woman. I just see my friend Rose. And I said, well, if you didn't see a black woman, then you wouldn't have pointed at a black woman and said, I don't see a black woman. You pointed at a white woman or an Asian woman. These are the same people who every time they come to me, they want to talk about folks like, they want to talk about Byron Donald. They want to talk about Thomas Sowell. I'm like, why don't you want to ask me if I've read, Milton Friedman? Why don't you want to ask me what I think of Thomas Massey? I mean, we see and we recognize and we know that the difference exists. I always use this as an example. There's a reason why Sunday is culturally divided, and it's not because of racism. It's because people gravitate to the familiar.
People do definitely gravitate to the familiar. Ladies and gentlemen, mira, I have CH Senor Craig DeLuz, Project 21 Ambassador. Mira, the same thing that happens in the West Coast, or the same thing that happens here for us, listening, is happening in the West Coast. It's happening in Israel. It's happening in Texas. Listen, don't be bamboozled. We'll be right back right here on the Next Step Show with Peter Vazquez and our phenomenal guest, Craig DeLuz, and of course, the voice of liberty, the king of the castle.
From Pennsylvania to the St. Lawrence, from Buffalo to Syracuse, you got the voice of liberty on 6 great radio stations. We'll be right back.
Do you have a motorcycle taking up space in your garage? Does that ATV need to find a new home? Arkport Cycles is looking to buy good used motorcycles, ATVs, and side-by-sides. Or maybe you just want to get rid of that monthly payment. Then now is the time to bring it to Arkport Cycles at 7611 Industrial Park Road, Hornell, for a free, no-obligation evaluation. Or maybe it's time for an upgrade. We're getting new vehicles every day. So head on in to Arkport Cycles today. We're your one-stop fun shop.
The youth of our city are in a new crisis. Criminal justice reform has created the consequences of no consequences and generated a whole new generation of 12 to 17-year-old kids committing serious crimes. Never before have we had this level of youthful offenders. But 90% of these kids are just trying to do the right thing and need a safe sanctuary to retreat to. That's Rochester Youth for Christ. You can be a part of this solution by giving generously and regularly at YFCRochester.org/donate.
Peter Vazquez and Next Step Show on the Voice of Liberty.
Brought to you by Youth for Christ Rochester, YFCRochester.org. Final segment today. Again, here's Peter.
Muchas gracias, señor hermano Bob. We have a Senor Craig. Sir Craig, I appreciate you spending some time with me today. I really do. Let me ask you, because I have to assume that there are a few heroes in California. See, YFC Rochester, Youth for Christ Rochester here, locally, sir, these guys work, right, without any state dollars whatsoever, like grant dollars and stuff like that. I mean, they focus on the generosity.
They don't want them.
They don't want them. It controls, right, the narrative and the help that can be given. It's nuts to me, but they do it in a manner that has saved more lives in an area where a local appointed commissioner of urban development, pay attention to the title, said that the people that Youth for Christ serve, we should just throw money at them so that they don't rob the rest of us. What would you respond to someone who said that to you as a school board member, Craig?
I would tell them that, I don't want to put this. First of all, there was a time in which, great book you want to read, it's called The Tragedy of American Compassion, but it talks about how it used to be a time that all of the assistance, the social welfare, the job creation, all of that was created by the private sector, and it wasn't until really the New Deal that the government started to take all of those things over. So first of all, local charity, in particular, church-based local charity, is always a better way to go because they always do more with less. And because their goal is not just transforming the situation of people, but transforming their spirit and their souls, they are much more effective. They invest more into the people, not just financially, but helping to get to know them, understand them, and help them address their issues. Now,
hey Craig, I'm sorry. I got to interrupt real quick and the church, only because, I assume you do at some level as well. But I live in an area where church, you're not going to believe me. It took me a second to convince the Honorable late Dean Nelson, who in partnership with two others started the Frederick Douglass Foundation nationwide. But faith has been cooped by politics, especially left-leaning politics based on money here in the Rochester area.
Oh, tons of churches. There are tons of churches where that has happened, and in many cases, they have been duped. Used to be the most educated person in the community was the pastor. Now, oftentimes, they're the least educated when it comes to understanding public policy. They are more interested, oftentimes, in the relationship with the politicians and with the business community than they are with the relationship, making sure that people have a relationship with Christ.
Yep.
That is sad. Yes. That is very, very sad. But that is not every ministry. I want to believe it's not even most ministries, but that is not every ministry.
Absolutely not. However, it is the Southern Poverty Law Center's intent is to discredit anything that has to do with God, country, and family.
Well, unless you are preaching a liberation theology.
Anti-God, anti-country, anti-family.
Exactly.
That's real power, Craig.
Well, it's actually fake power, and the reason why I say it's fake power is because they're gaining position through lies. And the one thing I know about lies is this: if you put a lie next to the truth, usually the truth will win. Our biggest challenge is we have not been at those tables, involved with those folks, preaching the truth. We've been more of a retreat, circle the wagons, retreat, circle the wagons.
When you say we, I want you to do me a favor, sir, because you represent a magnitude of ideologies and perceptions, right? Mm-hmm. Because you do the Republican, you do this. The Southern Poverty Law Center went after pro-life organizations here in New York, or at least as a proxy, or helped support, like Jane's Revenge, who went after Compass Care through bombings and so forth, right? But define we. In your
Bible believing Christians.
Okay.
We have said, well, public schools are of the devil, so let's pull our kids out of public school, right? Yep. We've said the entertainment is of the devil, so let's not be involved in the entertainment industry. We've said academia is of the devil, and so therefore we're not going to be involved in academia. In place after place, we have removed ourselves from the public square. And then we're shocked that the enemy now controls that institution that influences society.
Yeah, it does. Which leads me to I have to assume close to the last topic, because this is the final segment of the show. And I'll tell you, I wish I could have you on for another 2 hours. But, sir, on May 12th, 2026, in the nationalcenter.org, see, you wrote a piece that was called When Wall Street Moves in Next Door. See, where it tracks closely with your California Black Media Commentary, which was syndicated on April 21st to the 24th. I mean, talk to us about this. What was that article about? Because as I understood it, your core point is important. Institutional cash changes the moral structure of the market. That's why Democrats can switch from wording, which is critical, like pro-abortion to pro-choice.
Well, exactly. See, I will tell you, I am a believer in free market economics. And normally I'm not involved or not interested in having government play a role or get involved or manipulate markets or anything like that. The problem is that we have a situation when it comes in particular to home building and in regards to housing, where government has played such a role. They've already manipulated the market. And as a part of manipulating the market, they've worked together with corporations to buy single-family homes and through their policies. And as a result, they're driving up the costs of homes in many places, in particular in many urban communities. And they've driven up the rents, once again, in many communities. And so when corporations and government start colluding, that's when you start calling it fascism. And that fascism, in the end, is winding up making it harder and harder for folks to be able to engage in or enjoy or even live the American dream. And so that's just talking about how when Wall Street goes in and buys a bunch of single family homes, that drives up the cost and winds up outstripping the prices for people who normally we'd be able to live there. I see that happening right here in Sacramento, California. You can see it happening in Los Angeles. You can see it happening in almost every major metropolitan community. You got companies like Blackstone, like Vanguard that are coming in and buying up a bunch of homes and then turning around and renting them out and driving up the rental costs.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mira, a home, see, a house, something that you own. That's not just shelter, Mira, that's an inheritance. It's a memory being created. It is a place where a child learns. Well, I thought I was Solani there for a second. A stability, right? Where a family, sorry, I couldn't help myself, builds equity. See, the thing is, in places like New York and California, words like equity have become, right, they become kind of skewed. But I believe that the housing market, right, has been played with a little too much. We're excluding people that work hard. We're excluding people that want to buy a house.
Right, and we're doing so through the policies that we have put in place that are literally pricing the average person out of the market. And if you can get into the market, if you can buy a home, I always tell people it is the greatest way in which people pass wealth from one generation to the other is through home ownership.
Yeah.
Right? As you buy a home, it builds equity. It really doesn't even matter where you buy it from, where you buy it at. If you buy a home, over time, it will increase in value. And so when you keep people from being able to have that, to be able to take advantage of that, you also put them in a situation where when rents go up, when prices go up, rents go up, they wind up losing. They wind up losing out. I remember when my son and his wife they just got married and they were looking to buy they were going to wait to buy a house in a really nice neighborhood. I said, no. I said, get a house.
Yeah.
Get in there so that when home values go up, you're going to build equity. You're going to benefit from it. Then you can use that equity to go buy the house.
Ladies and gentlemen, Craig DeLuz. Sir, you said when the remedy for racial discrimination becomes racial discrimination, we have not solved the problem. We have merely changed it, we have merely changed who administer it. And we see that in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, a home is a stake in the ground that says we are planted here and part of this community. We belong here and you can't move us. We are building something that can outlive us. Sir, I've got about 2 minutes left in the show, sir. I'm going to open the mic to you to share with my listeners some words of wisdom that can help us get through in a crazy state just like you live in.
Well, here's what I will tell you. I'm a firm believer in the scripture that says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will hear from heaven and I will come down and I will heal their land. Folks, we need to be involved and engaged, right? We need to, first of all, we need to be praying, right? We don't need to worry about what other folks are doing. We need to be praying. Our people need to be praying. We also need to be engaged. We talk about turning from our wicked ways. Apathy and not engaging with the world, that's part of our wicked ways. That I'm just going to take care of me and mine, that is part of those wicked ways. We are called to go into the highways and the hedges and compel them to come in. We're supposed to honor the Lord in all our ways. And that includes how we engage with our community, how we vote, and how we engage politically. If you are not involved and engaged, find some place to get involved and engaged, whether it's through your church, whether it's through your local county party, whatever it is. Find some place to get engaged and make a difference.
Or even sponsoring the Next Step show, see, here on the Voice of Liberty. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Craig DeLuz, see, Project 21 Ambassador, California Republican Assembly spokesman, and host of The Rundown. Sir, I appreciate you and all you Project 21 ambassadors so much. Thank you, and may God continue to bless you and the work that you guys do.
Thank you, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you for a while.
Absolutely, sir. Until next time. See, ladies and gentlemen, project21.org, you got to check them out. Check it out. Let me say this again. Psalms 12, verse 8, the wicked walked on every side when the vilest man are exalted. See, like hocus pocus. We'll be right back tomorrow. See, right here on the Voice of Liberty.
Hi, I'm Steve Tasker, and I want to share some great news. Heritage Christian Services is growing and hiring people to work alongside adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Over the years, my wife Sarah and I have supported Heritage Christian Services and the work that they do to advance an inclusive and equitable community. Their staff provides compassionate and dignified support every day as they enable others